introduction, and then I want to show a very quick little video clip that I think will set us up for the information that Dr. Paul has tonight and the profound fundamental application and universal application of what he's going to share with us tonight and what it's addressing. So Dr. Paul Arciero, full tenure for 2 universities, right, Dr. Paul? University of Pittsburgh and Skidmore College. And that's not, I mean, a lot of people that their accolades are that they're a tenor for 1 university, and we've got 2. So nice, he did it twice. Also dozens and dozens, I don't know how many at this point, but I think at some point you were over 90 published clinical studies. And when I do my presentation, I talk about you every week, so your ears are probably itching a lot, several times every week in my presentations. But I always say, Dr. Paul has a passion for the micro and macronutrients and how they impact the physiology of the human body. Would that be a pretty accurate statement, Dr. Paul?
Absolutely, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of your specialties that you're really passionate about is working with athletes, right, at that top peak performance level, and just seeing how much more we could help them improve through what you're learning and as we evolve and learn more things about nutrition. The gut, well, the most recent publication being published in probably one of the most premier publications, Nature Communications, and I know you're super excited about that. There's just so many things that we're excited about you and things that you've accomplished, and they just keep coming. And to hear another one that when you get excited, we get excited. And we're looking forward to hearing about that publication, about the gut health and the microbiome tonight, along with some other things. You guys, I talked with Dr. Paul earlier. We're probably going to have a part 1 and a part 2, because he's just filled with a lot of information. And for you athletes and those people that are working with athletes, he'll share some of that tonight. But I think we'll do a part 2 and really go into that peak performance and what Dr. Paul's unveiled. Also, he was just interviewed by the Associated Press. And you want to just say something real quick about that? That interview that will be released here real soon?
Yeah, sure. I'll touch on it tonight. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So great to see everybody. Wow, what a group. This will be a lot of fun tonight. Yeah, so I get calls, it seems like every day, but this one was special because when the Associated Press calls, it usually is a big deal. So I actually did 2 interviews. One was on overtraining syndrome. Simone, and I can't remember Simone's last name. She's the swimmer. Some of you will know her, but if I were to bring it up, her name is Simone Manuel. She had a really bad bout. So anyway, they interviewed me for that. And then just this morning, it was on medicated weight loss with Ozempic and Wegovy. What can we do to counter some of the harmful side effects of those weight loss medications? So yeah, it's a real honor to be viewed as someone who knows something.
Yeah, right. Well, and there's a lot of misinformation about that Ozempic, and maybe information that's being left out as well that people would want to know about. And I know we've been doing a great job at helping to educate people because of information that you've shared, Dr. Plan has shared. Also, he's the author of The Prize Life. Some of you have probably got his book, Protein Pacing. I think you've coined that phrase now, protein pacing. I love it. So without any further delay, I'm going to just go ahead and show this real short clip. It was actually shared with me by Sheila Morrison this morning. She texted it to me, and it was shared on a reel and Instagram by Alexa Romano. So let me just share my screen here, and then I'm going to toss it over to you, Dr. Paul, and we'll just have you go through what you've prepared for tonight, and I'll just interject some things and maybe pull out some of the fundamentals that you go over and how we practically apply those with isogenics. So with that, you guys, and if you just got on again, put your questions in the chat box, and us leaders will try to monitor those and make sure that they get answered and go through it that way. Okay, here we go. It's like, I don't know, 40 seconds or something like that. I think it really lays the groundwork of what we're up against. And most people are ignorant to it. They have no idea, what trusted food manufacturers and supplemental manufacturers. I believed their advertisements, and just there's some things that when you start to learn them, you start to realize okay, things start to add up as to why our quality of life is, you know, where it's at in North America, especially. All right. Yeah, and we are recording this meeting. All right, here we go.
1985, tobacco giant R.J. Reynolds bought Nabisco Foods. Tobacco pioneer Philip Morris bought General Foods, and 3 years later, Kraft Foods, making them the largest food producer in North America, and leaving the business of food in the capable hands of the same corporations who helped addict us to tobacco. Using the same tactics they used to promote tobacco, food companies set about peddling the entire planet a diet of processed goods, loaded with chemicals and additives, masquerading as food. This new machine operates with specific targets in mind, like addicting consumers, without them knowing it.
Okay. I feel like a lot of us know that already, but I also believe that a lot of us don't know that out there. And that's, the issue. And you're going to be talking about the gut microbiome, and that stuff interrupts that good bacteria and that microbiome in our stomach, and it causes health problems. I mean, these are things that are affecting the quality of our lives. And so if we can do something about it and we know it, I think we have a moral obligation to share that with other people. And some of us are really passionate about it, right? So, Dr. Paul, without any further ado, I'm going to toss it over to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Yeah, that's a really good starting point. I'm going to circle back. We'll kind of go full circle to that video. That's the first time I've seen it. There's been an onslaught of really good, high quality research that has shown that the consumption of the standard American diet, we call it the SAD diet because it is very sad, decreases the diversity of our gut microbiome. And that's a recipe for disease and unhealth. And so, yeah, it's not surprising that the more processed and ultra processed foods that we consume, the more damage we do internally. We often associate poor eating habits of refined foods and unhealthy foods impacting primarily our body composition, right? It results in some excess body fat. But what it does to the actual inner part of our body, the most inner part, our GI, our gastrointestinal system, in terms of bloating and diarrhea and gas, GI symptoms, we call it, are profound, and it's related to this reduction in the gut microbiome diversity. So anytime we do that, for example, antibiotic overuse, that decreases our gut microbiome microflora, we call it. So the diversity of our microflora, that results in a lot of diseases. So yeah, we'll come back to that. Maybe just keep that filtered in the
Hey,
back
Dr.
of your mind
Paul,
as we're moving.
real
Yeah.
quick, I just need to show this real quick on our screen to protect us associates. We know that you come from a position where you can share things from a clinician, which as associates, we cannot. I just wanted to make sure I got this since we're recording this disclaimer. All I need to do is show it. People can read that. And back to you.
Great. No, that's really helpful. Yeah, thanks, Dave, for that. All right, so let's share some information here. I'm super excited about this. Thanks again for having me. This is such a joy to be here tonight with all of you. So I'm just going to run through a couple of slides. So Dave did my intro. Thank you, Dave. Just to give you all another kind of preface here of the content that I'll be presenting tonight, because I believe so strongly in this content for you to use it in a really positive, effective way, right? Because the research that I do, ultimately, I want it to become implemented. So, I want implementation of the science. That's really important. It's one thing conducting the studies and having it published in these premier journals, but if it's not implemented in people's lives, then what use is it? And that's I believe, the greatest outcome of the research that I do. It provides a platform for all of you on this call tonight to share it with other people so that it can be implemented in their lives so that they can make a difference and in your own lives. So this is what's called peer-reviewed research. I receive funding from all different sources, and I know oftentimes certain scientists and other people out in the general public believe there's a tiered system to how you derive funding for research. They always think government is the top level of funding, and then philanthropic, and then industry. And I'm here to tell you that that's just not necessarily true at all. You can receive industry funding and have some of the most high quality, sophisticated, and rigorous research available. So there's bias in everything to some degree. However, that bias is mitigated significantly when you follow the scientific process. So I just want to put that out there. Just because my research is funded by Isogenics, sometimes people think, it's industry, it can't be that high quality. Well, I mean, go tell that to the editors of Nature Communications and Obesity and Journal of Applied Physiology and Frontiers in Physiology, really high quality, high impact journals. And if you do know the process of peer-reviewed publication of research, you know that it does not matter where the funding comes from, because you have to go through all the same checks and balances. And in fact, oftentimes when the funding is sourced from industry, the oversight is even more, I think, intense and really critical. So I just want to dispel that. There's really not. Again, I have NIH funding right now in the millions of dollars, and I would say that there's really no difference between that and all the funding I've ever received from industry and philanthropic. So you have to maintain the ethical standards, and then the review process is very, very rigorous. So I just want you to know that this content, the information that I'm presenting to you tonight, is based on a massive foundation of scientific integrity, of scientific rigor, of scientific validity, of peer review, expert peer review. So this is not a hunch that I have. It's not something that I've published on the web or the internet. This has been scrutinized by literally the top experts in the world. So I want you to have a great deal of confidence in the information that I'm presenting to you tonight. I think that's a really good starting point. All right, so here's some of the publications that I've published in peer-reviewed journals. And these are, again, high-impact journals, as you see in front of you, Frontiers in Physiology, Obesity Journal, and the one that I'll be talking about a little bit later, Nature Communications. So these are very well known in the field, and I just want you to know that they've been scrutinized and critiqued, analyzed by multiple sets of experts at every level. And the fact that we have this in scientific journals of high impact and peer review is super special. You guys are in a class of its own. So I want to start tonight just by highlighting and maybe bringing to your attention what are those diseases that we are most susceptible to starting at earlier and earlier ages. These will look very common to many of you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I just want to point out the reference here of where the research that I've conducted is relevant to the diseases that we encounter as we age. These are the diseases of aging. We have 5 diseases of aging. This is very well known, very often published and written on, and you go to any doctor's office, they'll clearly confirm this. This is very well-known information. So diabetes is the number 1. Heart disease, of course, you can't really see it. I think I got my, let me see if I can move this out of the way a little bit.
It's working. We can see the heart disease there.
Okay, perfect. And then next after that, we have things like neurocognitive or neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and other related dementias. Those are on the rise, by the way, and it's all related to the video that Dave showed at the beginning. It's when we have a destruction of our gut microbiome, that's really the starting point for our brain to start to decline, right? Because our gut is our second brain, and there's a direct line of communication. So if you have an unhealthy gut, you're going to have an unhealthy brain. So we need to take care of our gut, and I'm going to show you how to do that at the highest level of lifestyle. And then we have inflammatory conditions and toxicity, things that contribute to autoimmune diseases and cancers. So these are on the rise as well. And then the final one, I'm going to take me out. The final one that we have are things like musculoskeletal issues, things like low back pain, things like normal weight obesity, right? We have an obesity epidemic, but we also have a growing number of the population that is actually of normal or even a little bit underweight that is obese. Now you might be asking yourself, Dr. Paul, do you know what you're talking about? How can you be normal weight or underweight and be obese? Well, that's because of your composition, your ratio of your fat to your muscle. So we have a growing number of people because of inactivity, poor lifestyle, poor nutrition that are of a healthy weight, and perhaps even a little bit less under a healthy weight, that are obese and are at risk for disease. So we call it normal weight obesity. And then things like osteosarcopenia, that would be the loss of your bone mineral density and your muscle mass. And I want to focus on that one because muscle mass makes all the difference in the world. So how can I say that? What does that mean? And I guess I want to back up. I don't mean to just say muscle mass. I want to say lean body mass. Muscle mass is part of your lean body mass, but it's not the only thing that constitutes your lean body mass. Your vital organs and your brain also comprise your lean body mass, not just your muscles. So I break this down kind of simply. The number one lifestyle related component of our health is our metabolism. Once our metabolism becomes compromised, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about what that means to have a compromised metabolism, we have disease onset. A good example of this is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. I'm sure you've all heard of that before, right? No. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide is long form for NAD, and many of you are familiar with recharge NAD, but NAD is the most ubiquitous molecule that we have in our body. It's in every cell. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's associated with everything related to our metabolism. So when we start to reduce the amount of NAD, it's a coenzyme. I teach this almost every day in my classes that I teach when I teach nutrition and nutritional biochemistry and physiology. When we have a reduction in this really most valuable player molecule in our cells, NAD, it contributes to DNA damage and inability for the DNA to repair itself. It contributes to low energy levels because we can't convert the chemical energy from the food that we eat into the mechanical energy, into the ability of our metabolism to function and repair and to rejuvenate and rebuild and to move our body. You know, simple functions, for example, all of us sitting up right now, that all, you know, requires NAD to be able to do that. So I'm just giving you a very small snapshot of the roles that NAD plays in the body. But it's massive. It's invaluable. It's the most important chemical process that we have in cells. And so that's our metabolism. So people who are deficient in NAD compromise their metabolism. So what is metabolism? Well, metabolism is what most of us are doing right now, unless you're out for a walk listening to this, which that would be wonderful. It's what we do mostly at rest. We spend most of our day, even though some of us claim that we're super active, that may be true, but it still is in much lower levels of what you normally do when you're resting. Because it also, resting metabolism also incorporates us sleeping. So it constitutes about 60% of our metabolism. The next amount of our metabolism is what we do when we move, exercise, physical activity, fidgeting, you know, not necessarily fidgeting, but movement, purposeful, programmed movement. The third form of our metabolism is what happens after we eat. So when we eat, we actually increase our metabolic rate. We increase our metabolism. Certain micro and macronutrients impact our metabolism a little bit more. And then the final one is this very unique one. It's called non-exercise activity metabolism. That's the fidgeting. So for people that move around spontaneously or restless sleepers, those are people who burn actually a significant amount of calories of their metabolism when they're sleeping, doing this restless movement without even knowing it. All right, so those are the four main one, two, three, four main components of our metabolism. So the next question would be, what is responsible for this metabolism and keeping it healthy? Well, as I already mentioned, it's your lean body mass. So it's your vital organs, your heart, your muscles, your kidneys, your lungs, your bones, your brain, all of those things that we take for granted many days of our lives. But that plays a critical role. So I'm a metabolism researcher. I feel that, if we really want to hold the answers to optimal health and performance, we need to do a better job in maintaining our metabolism. And so these are the factors that determine our metabolism. So I'm going to start right in. What is the best lifestyle to optimize our metabolism? What is the best lifestyle to optimize our NAD, our nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide levels, NAD in our body? Our lean body mass, our muscles, brain, lungs, our vital organs. What is it that we can do to help sustain that? Because here's a takeaway that I want you to really embrace tonight. When we begin to compromise our metabolism at any level, whether it's our vital organs, our muscle mass, our NAD levels, our gut microbiome, talk about a metabolic organ, our gut is probably one of the most active of ours. When we begin to compromise the integrity and the health of our metabolism in those organ systems that I just mentioned, our risk for those 5 diseases, diabetes, heart disease, neurodegeneration, inflammatory toxicity, cancer-related diseases, and musculoskeletal, skyrocket. That is what I want you to know. So what you should all be asking yourself is, Dr. Paul, what can we do to maintain our metabolism? You just told us that if we compromise our metabolism, our organs begin to dysfunction, and that increases drastically our risk for those 5 diseases of aging. And here's the thing. We call them diseases of aging, but guess what? They're occurring in younger and younger boys and girls. We have type 2 diabetes occurring in kids that are less than teenage age. We have obviously certain cancers. We have heart disease, signs of heart disease that are occurring in younger and younger children. So to think that, oh, that's down the road, I don't need to worry about that until I get to my 40s or my 50s is just simply not true. We're experiencing the diseases of aging that I just listed, those 5, because of metabolic dysfunction occurring in young children now. So I don't want anyone on this call to think that it's down the road. It's not, it's now. And so what can we do? What is the best lifestyle? Let it out of the bag for us, Dr. Paul. Well, it truly is based on my research. I'm not just speaking to plug something here. I'm going to speak to the research, and you'll see it in just a minute. It truly is predicated on this protein pacing, nutritional fasting, and then this lifestyle. I'm going to hold off on speaking to the RISE exercise or movement tonight. So I'm going to focus on just the protein pacing and nutritional fasting. And I'm really excited to do that because that's the lowest hanging fruit. What we nourish our body with on a daily basis makes the greatest impact on our metabolism, which in turn reduces our risk for those 5 diseases of aging. So if all of you are watching this, I know this is being videotaped, but if you have your cell phone, this would be a great time. Otherwise, I don't want you to be on your phone. But no, take a picture of this. This is a non-negotiable. And when I say that, I don't mean to come across, with too much hubris here. But I'm doing it for your own benefit. This really is a non-negotiable. And I'm not just saying it because I created it over the last 38 years of my research. I'm saying it because many other scientists have also supported my protein pacing in their own research agendas. And we've all shown time and time again, in order to protect your metabolism, which begins to decline by the age of 40. I know a lot of people think, oh, I don't have to worry about my metabolism until I get into my 50s and 60s. And that's just not true. There's very, very compelling scientific evidence to show that our metabolism takes a massive hit when we're in our 40s. And that also relates to how well we begin to metabolize food. So this is a non-negotiable, and it has to start in our teenage years. Actually, I would even recommend it even younger. But we have to follow these tenets of protein pacing. So I'm not going to go over them. You have them in front of you, and I'll allude to them in the rest of my talk tonight. Here's the nutritional fasting. Again, this is a non-negotiable. This is something that we all must do to varying degrees. Now, you'll see here that I have it listed as 1 to 2 days per week, but This is specific to those people who are experiencing one or more of the 5 diseases of aging. I'll say it again. If you are experiencing one or more of the diseases of aging, it would be to your benefit to do a 1 to 2 day nutritional fast, intermittent nutritional fast, a week until you have achieved your goal, until you have reduced your levels of toxins, until you have improved your muscle mass, until you have improved your diabetes risk with blood sugar being reduced. You've reduced your blood lipids or your blood pressure. You've had an improvement in your executive function, your processing skills. So I would highly recommend this because of the very favorable cellular adaptations that occur of these two things working in tandem. Dave asked me today, which one is it that's driving these really profound, groundbreaking, novel health improvements that I've demonstrated in my research? And I would never want to place the finger on one over the other. It's a combination of both protein pacing and nutritional fasting. It's not one that's driving it more than the other. It's this synergy, this congruency, this harmony. Harmony is the word of these two things working together. And I can go into a lot more detail, but when you protein pace and then undergo a nutritional fast, that combination pushes the autophagy, the mitophagy, which is the mitochondria being able to divide. It is, the house cleaning, or I call it vacuuming, which is autophagy. It's the apoptosis. That's the programmed cell death of cells that you don't want anymore. They become what's called senescence. They become old and not working properly. So you want to kill them off and get rid of them, and then bring in autophagy to vacuum them up. So these things work in tandem, synergy with each other. And then on top of that, after you come off the nutritional fast of the 1 or 2 days, and you nourish your body with that protein pacing, and you turn on protein synthesis because of the high concentration of the branched chain amino acids, specifically leucine, that I know you've talked about in the past, you are reaching the holy grail. You're reaching the holy grail of optimal health. You've undergone autophagy, mitophagy, apoptosis. You are, placing the cells, you've activated NAD. You've placed your body in the most ideal environment to begin to replenish, rebuild, and rejuvenate with that protein pacing on the morning after. So I really feel so strongly about this because I think we oftentimes mutually exclusive choose. We kind of, these things aren't mutually exclusive. They have to be done in tandem, and they're non-negotiable. We all need to be on it. Now, if you're somebody that's at a healthy weight and you're not at necessarily risk for one of these diseases of aging, I recommend nutritional fasting of 1 or 2 days back to back if you're doing a 2-day. Once every 3 to 4 months. And here's why. With nutritional fasting and the processes that it activates, the autophagy, mitophagy, and apoptosis, those all have memory, meaning the cells remember and recall and build up a memory pathway of signaling. It's called a signaling pathway, so that when you do it every 3 to 4 months, it remembers it. And because you're in better shape, because you're more healthy, that signaling pathway is upregulated. It's more sensitive. That's what we call it in scientific terms. So it remembers it better, right? It's got a little more recollection. It's got a little, better memory about it. But when we have one of the diseases of aging that has infiltrated our body, that kind of interferes with that signaling pathway. So that's why you need to do it more often. And so what we do in our studies participants who do have one of the or more of the diseases of aging, we make sure that they're nutritionally fasting 1 or 2 days a week consecutively for a period of time, usually 4 to 8 weeks, sometimes 12, depending upon the degree of their disease state. And then after that, we reduce it down to only once or twice a month. And then once they achieve their goal, then it's the 3 to 4. Now, if you're a highly trained athlete, which I'm not sure how many of you are on this call are, I work with many, counsel many elite athletes, and I make sure that they're doing it very strategically only about 2 times a year. One during heavy volume training, where they're building up a lot of free radical damage and cellular damage, because it's good to nutritional fast to help reduce that cellular oxidative damage. And then immediately after the competitive season has finished. And that's because you put yourself through an enormous stress load during the competitive season. So heavy training load and immediately after competitive season are the two ideal times to engage in a nutritional fast. Wow, that's awesome. Huge content bomb right there. I hope you're all taking massive notes because that's high level. And I'm so glad you got to listen to it. So what is it about metabolism, Dr. Paul? I ask myself, and I'm talking in the third person. Well, here's why it's so important. And again, I'm just showing you intermittent fasting, but again, it has to be performed in tandem with the protein pacing. This gentleman that you see on the screen right now is the typical North American person. I mean, unfortunately, this is the direction that we're going. They are starving in a sea of excess. I'll say that again. Most humans that populate North America, now into Europe and around the rest of in certain other countries, are starving in a sea of excess. So you might be asking yourself, what do you mean by that? Well, this is what I mean. We have an abundance of high energy calories on our body in the form of body fat. This gentleman is a good example. Unfortunately, people that are in this category, which is a growing number now, almost up to 80% of the population. I know it's a very sad fact and statistic. They have so much body fat. They have upwards of 100,000 calories on their body. Do you know how much that could last you if you were to be stranded on a remote island? About 50 days, right? Because we burn about 2,000 calories a day. So the typical person has about enough fat calories on their body to sustain them for 50 or more days. And we have evidence of that having happened to certain people where they have, undergone for whatever reason, and they've had to survive. So we have the capacity to do that. Unfortunately, many of us can't. And here's why. We have much fat, too much, but we're not burning it. And the question should, really raise a lot of hairs on your head or your back or wherever. It should, make you start to, question what's going on here. Why is it that we have all this body fat and we're not burning it through our metabolism? Well, the reason is because we have a condition called metabolic inflexibility. We're not capable of metabolically switching from one fuel source to the next. Why is that, Dr. Paul? Well, here's why. It's because of this overconsumption of highly refined, ultra-processed foods, not to mention a very sedentary lifestyle, but removing sedentarism, we call it. Take that out of the picture. Let's just focus on nutrition because that's the most powerful of all lifestyle strategies. And it works either in favor or against us. The majority of people, it's working against them. And so because of this high ultra-processed intake, we are very metabolically inflexible. We are starving in a sea of excess. We are dependent on quick-acting energy because we can't access our body fat. Sit on that for a second, or just think on that. We're incapable of accessing and burning for our metabolism this excess of 100,000 calories that could last us 50 days or more because we are metabolically inflexible because of the way that we're consuming food. So instead, what we become is something known as a sugar burner, a carb burner. And remember, I haven't told you this yet, but we have a very limited supply of carbohydrate, only enough for about a day. We have about 1,500 to about 2,000 calories. That's about how much we burn a day. And because we're so metabolically inflexible, we can't switch from being a carb burner to a fat burner. So what that does is it requires us to constantly eat. And that's what most people are doing. They get hungry, their blood sugar, is already high, but they have drive to eat because they're so undernourished, even though they're so consumed with calories, fat calories, they need to get calories in because they can't access the fat stores. So it's a real problem. And we need to do something about it very quickly. So that's the sad American diet. However, when we begin to undergo a nutritional fast, we begin to make this transition. All right. And so that's what we ideally want to become here on the right. This woman that I show here is what we call a fat burner. She's been able to activate because of the protein pacing and the nutritional fasting. So that's the benefit. This is a highly scientific slide. I don't want to get too much into this, but it's actually not that hard to understand. Let me just show you in this first graph here up at the top. This is showing your blood sugar, so your blood glucose. And so this is what a normal, typical, standard American diet, right? Typical American eating pattern does. You eat a highly refined diet, it increases your glucose level. And then you get hungry because you can't access your fat stores, even though you have 100,000 calories. So you got to eat again. So as you can see, they end up nibbling all day. Well, what ends up happening is they never put themselves in that healthy state of fasting, of autophagy, apoptosis, and mitophagy. So, and they never have those things activated. And so how we measure that is by a substance in our blood that is a byproduct of fat breakdown, which of course they're not doing, called ketones. So the ketones are flatline, meaning they don't change. Here's what happened in people who do a short intermittent nutritional fast. B is the winning ticket, by the way. So if you, as you're looking at this, so here you see the glucose, it remains very low. That's favorable because now the body says, oh, I don't want to burn the glucose. It's already low. I'm going to tap into the fat stores. And then look what happens to the ketones. So B is where you want to be. That's the 1 or 2 day nutritional fast. And that's the sweet spot because that gives you the opportunity to metabolically switch from burning your carbs, which are very limited, and preserving your fat, to transitioning into preserving your carbohydrates and burning nearly entirely your body fat stores that you have an overabundance of. And that's what begins to make an impact on a healthier metabolism and a healthier body composition. So I hope I pointed this out really strongly. C is those that are being misled thinking that time-restricted eating is the best form of nutritional fasting, and it's not. You tease it. I call it the teaser. I call it the autophagy, mitophagy, apoptosis tease. So when you time-restrict eat, you just about get your ketones up. That's the C figure that you see here. And as you follow it, you see that it begins to climb, and then you blow it by eating at 12 o'clock or whatever time. You have that 8-hour window. You got to jam everything in. And oftentimes these excursions don't look like this in terms of the glucose. They're actually a lot higher because what most people do during that time-restricted eating block is they overconsume calories. And that causes the blood sugar to jump up even higher. So the net of the ketone, the fat burning, is actually in many cases even lower than this. So if you're somebody on this call who's been told that time-restricted eating is the new buzz, you want to restrict eating for 12 to 16 hours a day and eat within the short window of time, I'm here to tell you that without question, with 100% scientific certainty, that is not the best way to do it. You're not going to favorably impact your health, the diseases of aging, or your body composition. The best way to do it is the 1 or 2 day nutritional fast. That would be B. All right, so I know you've learned a lot about the benefits of the undenatured whey protein, and I'm going to jump right to really the bottom line of it. It's comprised of whey and casein, but what I want to focus on is the undenatured whey protein concentrate. The reason why that's so healthy for us is because of the enormous concentration of these essential amino acids, specifically the branched chain essential amino acids, of which leucine is the most potent. So I always love to give the analogy, and usually when I do this in my classes with my students, it turns on a light bulb, no pun intended. Leucine is actually the light switch. So when we talk about protein synthesis, that's the cellular pathway that activates our metabolism at the highest level. So it is responsible for the health of our cells, protein synthesis, along with NAD production. So when you take in this leucine, it is the light switch. So we have, without leucine, you have a varying degree of a dimmer switch. So just think of a dimmer switch. But without leucine, you really can't move it much. It's kind of stuck. Or if you do move it, it doesn't really illuminate the room lighting anymore. It's not until you take in sufficient amounts of the amino acid leucine that you actually are able to activate the dimmer switch to the top, or to activate the switch itself, which is why I showed both examples there, a light switch and a dimmer switch. So I'm here to tell you that if you want to optimize your protein synthesis pathway to activate your metabolism on a regular basis, you need to protein pace every 4 hours, and you need to do it with the highest quality protein as often as possible. So the next question that people often ask is, Dr. Paul, what would that look like? What would be the highest quality sources of protein? So I'm going to move through these, but just know these are the non-negotiable protein pacing top choices. You all have those at your fingertip. It's isolene plant-based, it's isolene whey-based, and it's isolene pro. Now I made these bigger intentionally because these are all the best sources, but they go up slightly with each one that you choose on this scale. So the isolene plant-based, excellent. It's got a wonderful amino acid profile. It's got sufficient leucine. The isolene is a little bit better because of the whey having a slightly higher leucine content, and then the isolene pro optimizes it. So the analogy here would be the isolene pro, you would be able to move the dimmer switch up, very slowly and gradually, eventually getting close to full maximal lighting, maybe just below that. Isolene, you might be able to get even a little bit higher and a little bit faster of turning on the dimmer switch. With the isolene pro, it's the equivalent of going over to the light switch and turning it on all at one time immediately. You can't beat that. So that's the order of I would say, recommendation for those that are trying to optimize their protein pacing. And again, these three are non-negotiable. They have to be. These are the non-negotiable protein pacing snacks. So these are the non-meal replacements. The other three were meal replacements. These are things that you would want to use as supplements. Say, for example, when you first wake up in the morning, because you never want to exercise fasted, you should always take in a small serving of the highest quality protein you can consume. So an Isopro or a Tri-Release would be your best choices right when you wake up in the morning before you go out for your walk or your morning CrossFit, whatever it is that you do. So this would be, again, the plant-based Isopro, the whey-based Isopro, and then the Tri-Release would be your next top choices. And then we get into the snacks, and these you never want to eat by themselves unless it's right before an exercise bout or during an exercise bout or immediately after. That's where these would come in, these snacks. That includes these from the previous slide. It would be the bars, the plant-based, and then the whey-based would be other options for these snacks that you'd want to choose. And then we have what are called protein pacing add-ons or snacks. Again, I really caution people, when you protein pace, you want to be on a 4-hour eating window, meaning you want to eat every 4 hours. That's the ideal execution and implementation of protein pacing. If you're somebody who feels like you want to cheat and eat something in between that 4 hours, that means that you're not eating enough during the snack or meal itself of protein pacing. So if you're somebody who feels the urge that you need to snack, what you want to do is you want to up your intake of high quality protein during the actual protein pacing meal eating occasion. So I hope that makes sense, because you really do want to have that 4-hour time span of really nothing other than water and some electrolytes. But other than that, you want to give your body that downtime in between those protein pacing meals where you're not nibbling or snacking. That's a no-no in order to really optimize your health response. So just know that these things should not be eaten in between your protein pacing meals. You're either eating these with your protein pacing meal, with a shake, with a grass-fed, burger, a wild caught piece of salmon or fish, pasture-raised eggs or poultry, chicken, pork, or a plant-based complemented meal of some really nourishing legumes and beans, right? So this is what you would want to eat during those, not in between. All right. So then we come to the metabolic support, and I really want to take some time just to emphasize this, because these are critical, and you see them in front of you here. We have some really excellent, the Smart Mix, the Super Mix, the Triotic, the XM, with the Moringa, really, really great. I have two, though, that have kind of risen to the top. Well, I like the Biobiotic because it's got some, biotics in there for my gut. But the two that I really feel most strongly about are the Collagen Elixir, and of course, you already know it because I've already said it, the Recharge NAD. These are what are going to really help support your protein pacing and nutritional fasting. So these two things play a critical role in helping support our overall health and our health span. So All right, I know we're getting a little bit close on time, and so I'm going to jump right now. I'm going to pass over the medicated weight loss. I wanted to just get through those things that I just gave you, though, because to me, those are the non-negotiables. Those are things that you absolutely, with 100% certainty, must incorporate into your daily routine. So I hope you're all on the same page with that. So let's dive into the latest results from the latest study, and hopefully I can meet you all back in a couple of weeks to go over some of this other information. So I showed you at the beginning of the talk these publications, and I want to just take some time to really acknowledge the latest one. This is the Nature Communications. It's the leading science journal in the world. It's titled Gut Microbiome Remodeling. Think about that, a remodeling of the gut microbiome and the metabolome. We called it the metabolomic profile, which is really metabolic substances and molecules that circulate in our blood, in our microbiome, all throughout our body. We actually measured these things, these metabolic components that are inside of our blood. Improves in response to protein pacing with intermittent fasting versus a continuous caloric restriction. Those of you that are still on the call, I'm so happy that you're still here, because this information is so groundbreaking, so novel, which is why the leading science journal in the world accepted it for publication. And you all have this now as something that you can carry with you and share. It's almost your obligation. It's like your responsibility now, because this is so novel, so groundbreaking, so in terms of a public policy, health improvement recommendation, needs to be heard by the rest of the world. So I want to start here. This was a picture I took when I was in Sydney, Australia, in February. I traveled to Sydney, Australia to present to the audiences over there. And I went to the Botanical Garden in Sydney. For those of you that have ever been to Sydney, you know exactly what I'm going to be talking about. I've been to other botanical gardens, and they've been nice, really nice. Sydney's is overwhelmingly beautiful. And the reason why is because of the diversity of the flora, the diversity of all of the different types of species of plants. It is amazing. It's mind-blowing. This is just one picture, but this gives you a sense of the diversity of which the garden. Now, here's what's so unique about this. As a result of the diversity of the garden, it enhances and benefits other organisms that are living in there. The birds are out of control. I mean, they're amazing. So, of course, other species of plants, this was just one. I thought this plant was just, I don't even know the name of it. Some of you might know the name of it. I mean, breathtaking. And then you see over here some type of reptile and there was many of them. So my point here is this. This was a botanical garden that was rich in diversity because of the quality of the nourishment it was receiving from itself by the diversity of the different species. When we have a singular diversity, or a single species rather, in very low diversity, everything fails. Everything begins to lack its ability, failure to thrive. And that's what happens. And so it's the same thing in our gut. So here's what we did. We divided our study population into two groups. One was a protein pacing nutritional fasting group. The other was a heart healthy Mediterranean group that was consuming slightly lower calories. Both of them were, so they were both equal in the number of calories they were consuming. And these were a typical breakfast meal. So this was an Isoline Pro shake. This was the collagen. One of these was a collagen elixir. The other one was an Ionix. We had a bar for some of them. Here was some fruit. And here again was a classic example, hard-boiled egg, some oatmeal, fresh berries, and some tea or coffee for the Mediterranean. All right. And we divided them into those two groups. And then we measured their microbiome. So we collected their feces samples over the course of the 8 weeks. And we wanted to see how it changed. So I'm going to dive right into the results in the last couple of minutes here. This was profound. And why this is so interesting is the following. Up until this study being published, we didn't have a lot of good scientific evidence to show that our gut can remodel just based on the quality of the food that we're consuming. And again, I didn't choose just any diet. In this case, the standard American diet. I actually chose the #1 rated diet the last 7 years, the Heart Healthy Mediterranean diet. So I wanted to choose the best to compare it to, the protein pacing nutritional fasting. So keep that in mind as you see these results. And so the IFP is the intermittent fasting protein pacing. CR is the calorie restricted Mediterranean heart healthy group. So they underwent everything identically other than the quality of the nourishment. And here's what was so profound. What you see in these figures on this left side is the daily consumption of calories. So at baseline, this first set of scatter plots that you see at 0, that's when they came into the study, they were consuming relatively the same amount of weight. The calorie restricted group was a little bit less, but it was not statistically significant. At 4 weeks, they were nearly identical. You can see how tight those bars are. But here's where it got interesting. At 8 weeks, there was a drop in the amount of calories being consumed by the Mediterranean heart healthy. So when I say that, many of you hopefully on this call are saying to yourselves, oh, well, if the heart healthy Mediterranean is eating less calories, they should lose or gain more weight. Well, we know they should lose more weight because calories in, calories out. So that's not what happened. In fact, just the opposite. So despite eating less calories, that's the purple bars that you see here in the heart healthy Mediterranean, they lost not nearly as much weight. In fact, the over here on the C figures to your right here on the screen, the IFP versus the CR, the overall net weight loss was nearly double. And I say this to people and they think, oh, they must have been exercising more. No, there was absolutely no exercise allowed. We controlled all 41 of these study participants and said, you're not allowed to do any exercise for the 8-week study. We only want you to change your diet according to how we are asking you to do it. So either protein pacing with intermittent fasting or heart healthy Mediterranean. And as it turned out, the Mediterranean heart healthy group was actually consuming less food, but lost half the amount of weight that the protein pacing nutritional fasting. All of you should be, knocking your head thinking, how is that possible? Well, that's a good question. We want to know as well, but it was phenomenal, the results. This alone was published in the journal Obesity. And I'll show you a second what the body composition. But here's where it got even more fascinating. When they started the study, their diversity of their gut microflora, so go back to the Sydney Botanical Garden picture, they both had relatively low diversity, meaning they were in need. And these were people that had one of the diseases of aging already in place. So these were people that had relatively low diversity. They were not healthy in terms of their gut. Well, look at this. This is amazing. This figure alone stands alone. And I could, speak and yell this from the rooftops for the next 20, 30, 50 years. Look at the remodeling that took place. Again, not much difference in food, no difference in food intake. In fact, a little bit less in the heart healthy Mediterranean. But look at the diversity at 4 weeks. At 4 weeks, the protein pacing intermittent fasting had a significant increase in the diversity of their gut flora. That means they were getting massively healthier from the inside out. Again, protein pacing and nutritional fasting are non-negotiable. They are non-negotiable. At 8 weeks, it continued on with the same finding that the protein pacing intermittent fasting continued to have a significantly more diverse gut microbiome than the heart healthy. That's amazing. That is incredible. So we took it one step further. We not only wanted to see what the overall diversity change was, which in this case was much greater for the protein pacing nutritional fasting, but was there a specific species or family that was driving this? I don't know how many of you grew up in the era that I did, but when I learned this whole phylogenetic path, it was King Philip came over for green spaghetti, right? So 4 is the family, G is the genus, and the S is the species. So the family, genus, and species are usually what are measured when we're quantifying changes in a certain region of flora of a system of the body. In this case, the gut microbiome lends itself very well to this. Well, look at these findings. This is incredible. I mean, just the color itself, you're looking at the color. So this specific, very highly sophisticated laboratory technique that we use to compare the two groups is expressed by the depth of the color. Again, it resembles the microflora, right? More colorful flowers. So I'm just showing you this first one, this Christenolaceae that you see, Christensenolaceae. So that's a mouthful. Christensenolaceae, this first one that you see right here on this first row. If you look, the protein pacing intermittent fasting at week 4 and 8 was a deep, dark red. So were some of these others that you see here. There was another 4 that also were expressed much more colorfully. But look at down below with the heart-healthy Mediterranean, which is symbolized by the CR. Nearly nothing, nearly nothing. I just want to point that out because it supported this overall diversity, that there were specific families and genes and species within our gut that were being targeted with this nutritional eating pattern. That is amazing. I don't know. I get so excited about this. I always kid myself with my students. I have a condition called SDS, which is science derangement syndrome. You know, this is the kind of stuff that brings to light, because this is the kind of stuff you want to share, that we have scientific evidence at the most molecular, biochemical, molecular level of change that's taking place. You don't see this every day. This is very unique. This is very, groundbreaking and novel, that we actually can demonstrate at such a small level of change that manifests itself in such a major way of health improvement. Because I'm not even showing you all the health improvements that occurred along with this. So we also had something in our blood that we measured. This was the inflammatory markers. Remember, I said that one of the diseases of aging is an increase in the inflammatory markers. And so once again, certain of these inflammatory markers increased and certain of them went down. But here's the bottom line. I know this is a lot of just busy figures. The change that occurred in these inflammatory markers were such. The protein pacing nutritional fasting group had a change in these inflammatory markers that are associated with an increase in the mobilization and the oxidation of our body fat. And that was what was so interesting, that not only did body fat drop more than double, especially our visceral fat, it dropped 33% in the protein pacing nutritional fasting group. It dropped 16% in the heart healthy Mediterranean. Last time I checked, 16 to 33 is a doubling of fat loss in our visceral area. And so, again, profound improvement. Here it is right here, actually. So you can see 33% reduction. This is in the same study participants that had the massive improvement in their gut microbiome. So to finish, not only did we find these magnificent, very molecular, physiological, biochemical, and body composition changes, but we were also interested in what was the change in their gastrointestinal symptomatology. So were they reporting less stomach aches? Were they reporting less bloating? Were they reporting less diarrhea or constipation? And guess what? Yes, 3 times less. They were reporting 3 times less. So not only do we have scientific evidence that the gut improves in its microstructure, its remodeling of its very basic origin, with the family, genus, and species changes that I just reported, but we also had it manifest in a more outward way of people reporting 3 times less GI disturbance. Oh gosh, you guys, this is so awesome. I just love it. All right, so the changes were profound. One of the things that we did was we had one study participant who was in the protein pacing nutritional fasting group. And this gentleman was 62 years old. So I just want to speak to some of you out there that think age makes a difference in how we respond to things. I'm here to tell you that nothing is further from the truth. at 62 years old, he had the greatest response. And again, the average age was 44, 46. He was 62. He had the greatest change in body weight loss, body fat loss, visceral fat loss, and gut remodeling. This is his gut remodeling right here that I'm showing you. We followed him because he lost 105 pounds in 120 days. His doctor called me and she said, this is unbelievable. I've been working with this patient for over 30 years. He's tried every diet known to humans, and he's never had this type of a response. His liver enzymes, his kidney enzymes, his blood work, he's reversed his diabetes. And I know, many of you aren't able to say this, but I can because I documented it in the study. He reversed his diabetes, he reversed his high blood pressure, he reversed his high blood lipids, all of those. He had high blood pressure, he had type 2 diabetes, he had hypertension, all of that reversed. Amazing. I'm going to end here because I think this brings it all home. Look at his gut in the picture on the left. This is him when he started. And this was 3 days before we started the study. We started the study in the fall, right at Labor Day. This is him 3 days before the study started, because we asked everyone of the subjects to take a picture of themselves. This is him the day of his testing 4 months later. And we live, we're up in upstate New York. So of course we had snow. So this is in 4 months, 120 days. He lost 105 pounds. He reduced his body fat drastically. His waist circumference just fell off. His blood sugar, again, he was diabetic. He went from diabetic to non-diabetic. He was hypertensive to non-hypertensive. I think I'll end there just because that's a telling picture that speaks 1,000 words. And I'm just so grateful. So to finish, what we found was that in comparison to a protein pacing, nutritional fasting, to a heart-healthy Mediterranean style diet, total weight, fat, and visceral fat loss was upwards of 58% improvement. Gut microbial diversity was a 25% increase. And then the reduction in GI symptoms was 55% improvement. Gosh, I gave you guys a lot, but I hope it was a benefit. And I think the major takeaways is that you have some non-negotiables now to incorporate into your own life and those that you really care for and love and want to make a health improvement with.
Yeah, huge. Oh, Dr. Paul, thank you so much. Give a shout out in the chat. We just want to take a few more minutes here, so stick around, you guys. As I get all of this science behind the results, like I've been with Isagenix 19 years, 2 shakes a day for 19 years. And when we talked today, I had just had a snack of Tri-Release. I was like, yeah, when you told me that. And, health, where most people go to, have their health monitored, I think it was Food Matters or Food Inc., the documentary said, we're ranked over 50th in the world in quality of life. So there are third world countries that are doing better than us. And you did the study against a diet that probably most people wouldn't have the discipline to live. The Mediterranean heart healthy diet. If we took the average American diet and put it up against Isagenix, which the majority of people are going to be on, eating macaroni and cheese, going to Wendy's or McDonald's, unless they get really fired up like I did before Isagenix, I'm going to do it again and I'm going to eat healthy. But then I always fell off and I went back to what my body craved. So, imagine had you done the study against the average American diet, instead of putting them on this, nutritionally supported, heart healthy diet.
I don't think anyone would have believed it. They're having a hard enough time, many people believing these results. And by the way, I should add a caveat. The Mediterranean group improved, as you saw. They had improvement. But the magnitude and degree of improvement in the protein pacing intermittent fasting was just simply off the charts. It was so remarkable. There were times where my research team, and again, I don't do these studies independent, right? I have an entire team of other scientists that work for me and work with me. And it was so overwhelming and just startling to see the degree of health improvement. So yeah, I'm so excited to be able to share this with all of you and just being able to, again, let you all know that these changes are not just taking place on the outside in terms of our appearance with weight loss or fat loss, but what's happening at the most molecular level inside of our body is such a magnificent health improvement. That's what gets me so excited. We truly are changing people's health from the inside out, and that has a win-win and will last the test of time. And so you're all in a great place. You're at a tipping point, Dave. I've said this many times. I was in Kansas City this weekend, and my last closing comment to the audience was that I've been involved with Isagenix now almost 10 years in terms of being an independent third-party scientist. And we had some massive growth years, right? 2014 to 18 was the most, prolific growth of the company. I mean, it almost tripled during those 4-year, 5-year time period when my early studies started to come out. Guess what, all of you on this call? These findings that I just shared with you tonight make those look trivial. They make those findings look trivial. What you have right now in your possession, I said to everybody, just think of having Dr. Paul in your pocket, right? So you can carry me wherever you go now, because you have this to help support you in your ability to share it. You have something that's so powerful, so life-changing, so ultimately globally impacting the health of the world that it has to be heard, it has to be spread, because it is like nothing else we've ever experienced before in our journey to optimal health. So,
A
yeah.
few years back, Dr. Rogerio, I don't know if you know him, but he's one of the leading researchers on microbiome.
Yep.
And he was introduced to Isagenix. I was actually able to sit down with him, and Peter Greenlaw, introduced him to Isagenix, and he was blown away by our shakes and how they support the microbiome that you've now got a clinical behind. But that microbiome, per molecule, per ratio, we're more microbiome than we are anything else.
Oh, by far.
There's more microbiome molecules than DNA. And
Yes.
it does. He explained how there's a brain connection with the microbiome, like you were saying earlier.
Correct.
So this is probably one of the greatest things we could do, that's so profound, but Isagenix again has made it so simple.
So exciting.
Yeah. So Crystal asked her to, if there's a couple questions. Do you have just a few more minutes, Dr. Paul, or do you need to go?
I do. I have a 5 a.m. flight tomorrow morning, so it'll be an early start, but I love what I do. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's just do like 1 to 3 questions,
Sure.
Crystal. I just asked her to pick out some of them that would be, the
Yeah.
most universal, that would be the most helpful for the biggest amount. So Crystal, were there a few in there that you found?
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Paul.
Hi, Kristen.
Yeah, I think we answered a lot of them in there already. Wendy and I were answering questions, but just 2 of them. Can moringa products be taken in between the protein pacing? That's one. And can you talk about, I know you talked about this in Kansas City, a little bit about if somebody is having some gas or bloating when they first start Isagenix, what can they do about that?
Yep. Yeah, those are good questions. So the moringa, you have to be careful of perturbing, it's called, but that just means disrupting the normal flow of GI processing and metabolism. So again, you want to try to limit as much as possible. I think some of the moringa products are pretty low calorie, so try to do it as early or as close as you can to the meal on either end, whether it's right after or right before your next one, but try not to do it right in between would be my recommendation. As far as the gas and bloating goes, oftentimes that's the transition period. In fact, some of our study participants commented on that were in the protein pacing intermittent fasting. They said, yeah, I feel a little more flatulence and disruption. But that's subsided, and so that's fairly normal. Sometimes it requires you to think a little creatively, and I have to be very careful with how I talk about this, because I know one of the strategies that many people use to help with that has not been recommended by corporate. So I would prefer not to comment on it, but I would just say that be creative. Maybe try some other things that might help, in terms of eliminating the disruption. I know that sometimes if I can not eat things that are super cold, so we're so accustomed to doing a shake with cold water or ice, maybe let it get to room temperature. We always know that as a child. I know that oftentimes when I was having trouble falling asleep, it was warm milk. I know when we're sick, it's warm tea. So I think you get my drift. But yeah, I mean, I think there's other strategies that people could implement that might help. But let's see, what else would I recommend?
The healing crisis, right? I mean, just continue on. Like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because sometimes there are discomforts as the body's flipping over and becoming more healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a transition. We know that for a fact. And you saw in the picture of the one case study participant, his remodeling underwent the greatest change in those first couple of weeks. So yes, experiencing some of those disruptive symptoms early on is not unusual at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a quick question. You had gone through diabetes, heart disease, cognitive inflammation, musculoskeletal, uh, and you said the musculoskeletal has as many diagnosed as diabetes and heart disease.
Yes.
But one of the things that I never hear anybody talk about is how many people die from that. I know personally a bunch of people who have lost their muscle,
Yeah.
a fall,
Yeah.
and they break their hip, never come out of the hospital. So, what are the statistics on death for that? Because I think this is being vastly underestimated.
Yeah, Malcolm, that's a great question, and I agree wholeheartedly with you that that's a tough one to put a finger on. And as you saw in my figure, I didn't have that, because what happens when you do risk susceptibility or onset of a musculoskeletal, so loss of bone mineral density, your bones become brittle, or loss of muscle mass, sarcopenia, where you increase your risk for falling. What ends up happening is you always develop what's called a comorbidity. So it's a little bit harder to specifically put your finger directly on that as a reason why. But your point is really well taken. I think this is important for everybody. It plays, as you saw in the figure, it's one of the highest. So the fact that we don't know necessarily the exact number of deaths attributed specifically to it, it is associated with very high mortality rate, because you develop one of the other 4 diseases of aging.
Yeah, awesome. We're going to have a part 2. I'm going to get with Dr. Paul, and we'll figure out next 3 or 4 weeks, get you back on here. And I know, we can go into some more of the athlete stuff. One other thing, and then we'll send you on your way. You guys type in the chat box how long you've been on Isogenics. I've been on it 19 years. I know one of the statistics that you said was an outlier from the stage was there's always attrition in a clinical study.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty average across the board. Do you want to talk about that and what you saw?
Dave, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, let me just put these things in perspective for you. And I don't take full credit, although, I do foster that community type environment with my research, whereas a lot of researchers are more detached from interacting with the study participants. But normal non-compliance or attrition in a research study ranges from 40 to 70%. I mean, it's high. It's not unusual for some studies to lose 50%, half of their study participants, that they recruit into the study. As you saw, ours are 90% or higher of retention, 90%. So in this study alone, over the course of the 8 weeks, and these aren't easy studies. I mean, some of these are very, very involved. And this is held true for all of my studies. I mean, I'm so proud of it, and I attribute it to the team that I've built over the last 38 years. But the fact that we have these individuals complying and adhering and staying committed is just incredible. As you saw, we recruited 41 and we finished with 39. One of them had to move away for a job, so I don't know if that even really counts.
Yeah, right.
So maybe we can say it was 95%. But no, I'm glad you brought that up, just because, yeah, that's huge.
The lifestyle approach is so important. If it takes willpower only lasts so long. So the more we can put the enjoyment in it, the more sustainable it is long term. So
yeah, simple,
guys,
low-hanging fruit.
Give a shout out to Dr. Paul. Wow, we could have
thank
kept going. We got another couple hours. We could have kept going, but we appreciate you and
thank you.
great
It's a treat.
information. I'm gonna
Hey,
unmute
thanks for
this.
having me. Great seeing everybody. I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I'm so excited. This is such a turning point. It's a tipping point, and you're all part of it on the ground level. So I'm here to support you all the way to the top. So thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm gonna unmute this so you can give a shout out to Dr. Paul. You guys, thanks, Dr. Paul.
Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you so
Paul.
much. It was
you.
great.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you, Dr. Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Thanks, Dr. Paul.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Paul.
Dr. Paul.
you.
Thank you.